Recently, a Marxist poopface by the name of Proletarian Renegade sarcastically pointed out that the city of Camden, New Jersey is on the brink of becoming an anarcho-capitalist society. What this Marxtard fails to realize is that I agree with this assessment 100%. However, New Jersey's Governor Christie is a crypto-Keynesian corporatist who, in the end, will not push far enough with his austerity measures. Recently Christie laid off a large amount of Camden city worker bureaucrats. According to the Associated Press, as many as 383 workers, representing 1/4 of the local government workforce, are expected to lose their jobs, including about half the police force and 1/3 of the city's firefighters. With this in mind, anarcho-capitalists nationwide must wonder, Christie, friend or foe? Christie has done some really amazing things. Socking it to the socialist Camden workforce was a huge victory for our side. While Christie seems to be dismantling the corporatist state, he will never go far enough. Let us examine why Christie isn't going far enough and what anarcho-capitalists can do in order to smash the state and replace it with a stateless free market. Point 1. Government unions. The day that Christie laid off all those useless firefighters, the president of the firefighter union Kenneth Chambers said, "It's one of the worst days in the history of Camden." Boo-hoo. Does Mr. Union Bureaucrat Crybaby want his pacifier? While libertarians support free association and unionization per se, this does not mean that we encourage unions. Unions by and large are parasites and monopolies inflating the subjective value of labor through coercive force. Violent and anti-property strike actions like workplace occupations and blocking so-called scab workers are reminiscent of Petrograd circa 1917. Since 35% of government workers in the US are in unions, Christie is doing a really great thing by putting these parasitic scum out of work. Thankfully, since it is very hard to form unions in the private sector, we won't have to worry about these socialistic institutions. Have fun getting a real job, bureaucrats. In this regard Christie is doing a great job. Point 2. Cutbacks. Bleeding heart liberal corporatists and socialist Marxists talk about how harsh cutbacks to socialist programs like Medicaid are. These people are idiots, because in a free market, everything would work fine, and we would not need socialist programs. Christie correctly points out that there is no money left for these kinds of socialist programs. However, he is not cutting back nearly enough. Christie laid off a quarter of the parasitic socialist city workforce, but Christie falls short of the mark. He should have laid off the entire city workforce. And that's just the start of it. Anarcho-capitalists should mobilize in the streets demanding that Christie dismiss the entire government of New Jersey including the state legislature and resign. This way, entrepreneurs will no longer be confined by the corporatist state. That fat bastard isn't an anarcho-capitalist. He's a corporatist in Austrian clothing. Point 3. GOP socialism and the war on drugs. By now we've established that Christie is good on parasitic labor unions and weak on smashing the corporatist state. But we are missing the biggest reason why we cannot trust Christie as an ally of the anarcho-capitalist movement. That is, Christie is a member of the Socialist Republican Party. The Republican Party's first president was Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln hated freedom because he did not let the South secede and form their own nation. Secession is a fundamental human right, especially when it is done by entrepreneurs trying to protect their property from an aggressive, centralized state. The brave soldiers of the Confederacy will live on in our hearts, and, if the anarcho-capitalist movement has its way, the South will rise again. The Democrats and the Republicans love to persecute property owners trying to innovate and compete in the marketplace. This explains why Christie won't end the war on drugs in New Jersey. Leftists want to end the war on drugs because they think that it's racist or the sentences are too harsh or some shit like that. Whatever. Libertarians, however, want to grant freedom to the narcotics entrepreneurs. These entrepreneurs are often slandered as drug dealers or hustlers, but anarcho-capitalists must give these unfairly persecuted businessmen their full support against state tyranny. Christie took a half measure to freeing up the narcotics entrepreneurs when he laid off half of Camden's cops. But I stress, this is only a half measure. He should have just gotten rid of the police force altogether. To quote NWA, "Fuck the police." Communist Paul D'Amato once complained that organized crime is merely the production and sale of illegal goods and services for which there is a strong demand, and it follows the same logic of accumulation as legitimate capitalist enterprises. We anarcho-capitalists strongly agree for once. However, we do not view this negatively. The narcotics entrepreneurs should be freed up to do business without state coercion. This means rejecting the whole legalize it and regulate it rhetoric. Drugs should be legalized, but there should be no regulation, and the narcotics entrepreneurs should be able to keep their property. In conclusion, Christie is just another Republican masquerading as an anarcho-capitalist. Our movement cannot count him as one of our own. However, we must commend Christie for taking bold action against the socialist bureaucrats who want to preserve the nanny state. We should have no illusions about Christie, but since he has moved against the corporatist state, albeit on a small insufficient scale, he deserves some praise. Camden, New Jersey might become the fertile ground for an anarcho-capitalist society. Across the nation, our movement must create one, too many Camdens.